Happy New Year from the Players Ball Podcast. Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back. It's been a while. It's been 2 weeks, 3 weeks,
I
three
think three
weeks.
weeks.
Yeah. It's been 3 weeks since we've seen you all. We took off for the holidays. Two hardworking fellows with wives and children and other responsibilities. But we love you guys, and we're back. Um, Happy New Year's to you, and we're gonna talk more sports. How about that? Do you want to tell the people what you've been up to the last 3 weeks, man? Anything interesting happened to you?
I mean, I traveled to Indiana for a week for work, came home, did the Christmas thing, traveled, saw family all over the state of Georgia. And then for New Year's, it was more of the same, basically. But we did get to spend a little bit of time at home, getting some rest, relaxation, and recovery. Watched a lot of football. So all in all, it was a good couple weeks.
Yeah, man. Outside of a kitchen flood, I too had a good holiday. I got to spend a lot of time with families, particularly my wife's family, and then because my mom was traveling, she went to Kansas City. I got to see my nephews and my dad, and made it to a countdown. I think I went to sleep until 2 o'clock. Probably had one too many green tea shots. I'm not a big shot taker anymore, but New Year's Eve, tried to roll back the clock a bit and paid for it the next day, which enabled me to watch some football. So I watched a lot of football. I haven't really watched much basketball, man. I don't know, haven't had that bug yet. Um, but yeah, now let's dive into it, man.
We got traffic incoming, covering all the biggest news in ATL sports, no matter the lane, no matter the highway. Let's get into it with Spaghetti Junction.
College football playoff is in full swing. We are down to the final four. Um, One of those teams is not the Dogs. They ran into Ole Miss. Very good Ole Miss team. Crazy that Lane Kiffin's still making bread and not having to show up for work, right? But and then Trinidad Chambliss is just. I mean, he was a monster in that first game. I was hopeful that the Dogs could pull it out, and they led for a good bit of that game. But in the end, they did not prevail.
Yeah, the dogs scored a touchdown, and then on a ensuing drive, they recovered a fumble for a touchdown to go up pretty big. I think they led by 10 at that point. Um,
Yeah,
and I thought there that the game had kind of like taken shape, and the dogs were gonna just take take the bull by the horns, and they did not. They did not capitalize on an opportunity towards the end of the first half to score, and then turn around and score again uh, to to start the third. So there was an opportunity there for them to take a 14-point swing on top of already leading, and they failed to do so. They honestly did not look very sharp. Um, but hats out to Ole Miss. Ole Miss came to play. They were the more physical team. Uh, Ole Miss only lost one game so far this year, and it was the game in Athens to Georgia, where, as you said, Trinidad Chambliss had a fantastic game. Georgia didn't punt the entire game and played lights out on offense to just kind of keep up with the Joneses in that game, and ultimately got a couple stops there in the fourth quarter to win the game. Um, Honestly, I did not expect Ole Miss to come out the way they did, having all the changes going on in that program and the distractions and this and that. But they did. They came out ready to play, and unfortunately, the Dogs didn't have their best day, and for the second year in a row, they are knocked out in the Sugar Bowl after securing an SEC championship in a first round bye. So
do you think there's anything to? because I think it was 3 teams. You correct me if I'm wrong, but 3 of the teams that had buys lost.
So far in the 12-team playoff era, there have been 8 teams with buys. Those teams are 1-7.
Yeah.
The only team that won was Indiana, and they won handedly out in Southern California in the Rose Bowl. And, you know, obviously, like, that data point lends you to lean that, like, okay, maybe it's not the bye, but at the same time, there's 7 other teams that haven't been able to get over that hurdle. So I definitely think it plays a role into it, but I'm not going to sit here and say that was the reason.
Yeah, yeah. No, I wouldn't say that's the reason that the dogs lost. I do think that it's a component of why. It's something that needs to be corrected. So I sent you a clip of Dan Lanning, head coach of Oregon, who, he happened to win. He was not one of those teams that had a bye though. And he basically was like, look, we shouldn't have these long breaks. We should play every week until the season's over. Uh, the championship should be on the first, and that should be it. Players, coaches, from that point, portal opens and you go where you go. I think that makes for a sound transition into the off season that is college football. I couldn't point any negative arrows at him with what he was saying, especially that that they do feed the NFL, right? They are the minor leagues, especially now that the players are getting paid. So why should they make concessions around Christmas or that weekend for the NFL?
I
They're
don't
not getting
think
no money from what he said.
I don't think that they're necessarily making concessions specifically around Christmas. I do think that the calendar as it is already somewhat challenging, regardless of what you and I feel. Like, these
Hmm.
kids still have finals and stuff. Maybe they're not the same as like a traditional student, but they do have obligations outside of football that they can't necessarily just let completely go to the side. So there are some challenges with that and others with the calendar. But I agree in theory with what Dan Lanning's saying. I like his proposal. I think it's the best proposal that I've heard to a very challenging situation, especially with. So there's still the other elephant in the room, and that's, the high school recruiting and signing day aspect of this that has to fit somewhere in the calendar. So I think if you do what Dan Lanning says, like, you may have to slide some of that out to later, and then you don't necessarily get the kids on campus to practice for bowl practices, because there are kids that are technically played high school ball this year, graduated early somehow, or finished their requirements in high school and are on college campuses that are practicing or practice with the team for bowls, but we're obviously not.
But they haven't yet graduated.
I think they've. I
You
don't know how.
said graduated early, but all their academics are done, I guess.
Yes, all their academics are done. It's been a common thing. They're early enrollees, or what they're called. I don't know how it works from a high school academic side, like how they make it work, because it wasn't really done a lot, if at all, when we were in school, but it's very common now. You even have guys that reclassify so that they're in an entirely different class. So say they were supposed to graduate in 2027, they reclassify to 2026, and they're on college campuses now. That's how you end up with players like Ryan Williams, who are like 16, 17 years old playing college football.
Yeah.
But it happens. All that to say, it happens, and some of that may have to be modified to suit Dan Lanning's proposal. But as a whole, I like it. I think you shouldn't have these long times off. I think they also need to visit what they're going to do with the conference championship games, because in a small sample size, it has not been a good thing to play in that game. At least not win it. The 2 years, Georgia winning that game, getting the first round bye, and then losing in the first round hasn't
Indiana
boded.
won it, right? They won theirs.
They did win theirs, but they're the
They
lone.
also the only team that won the
Yeah, they're
the Lone Star.
the
Um,
outlier.
on the kids finishing school early and being on campus, I man, maybe there doesn't need to be space for that because that doesn't sound legit, right? Like, I mean, even when we were in school, I knew a brainiac or two, right, that they were taking classes at Georgia Perimeter College, but they still, they didn't graduate. There's definitely people who graduated early due to their academic success. It feels like they're rushing kids to school to start making money off them in college football. Now I know that's a reach, and we don't have to dive into that now, but that sounds absurd.
Yeah, I definitely don't think it is any of that, and we don't have to go into it. I think it's more about these kids wanting a head start because it gives them, like I said, bowl practice to practice, then all of spring practice to practice. So they have a better shot of playing year one if they enroll early and get spring practice and bowl practices before fall camp. So it definitely
You could
gives
also just pick a different school, right? Where if you are chasing that year one spot and you're a top dog in high school football, there's a school out there that's gonna give it to you.
sure. But there are other factors at play that I think these kids consider, and that's like television time. Like, sure, you can go to New Mexico State and start year one, but how much exposure is that going to give you for the NFL? Like, there is that side of it as well. So, like we said, we don't have to go into it in detail tonight. Maybe it's a topic we revisit in the future. But to get back to the original topic, I like, in theory, and the concept that Dan Lanning has laid out to play all of December, finish, and then the portal and all of that stuff happens after the season's already done. Because that's the other big, elephant in the room that's been an issue with the college football calendar and the playoffs and bowls and all of that. So,
The other thing you mentioned, and I just wanted to push back on at one just a little bit, is that they have to take finals. Academics in college, unless they pushed it back from when I was in there, were done like second week of December. That was it. So they wouldn't even have to make too many adjustments at that level. Not even, mentioning that, my previous stance on whether to take real classes or not. We won't dive into that, but their finals should be second week of December. So if that should be well within reach, I would think. I mean, it's a rigorous schedule. I heard coaches say that they're not. A lot of the coaches that are in the playoff, they're students. Their players didn't go home for the holidays, right? They stayed through Christmas, or maybe they got a day off. So they were there. They might as well have played on Saturday. Is what I would say to that.
yeah, I also think I didn't read the entire thing in detail. I've seen comments, quotes from Dan Lanning and his proposal, but I also think playing these games on campus makes a lot of sense because right now you only have that first round where they play a game on campus, but if you're going to keep these conference championships and the seeding and all this stuff intact, then there needs to be another advantage given to the team because clearly having an extra week or two off is not an advantage, it's a disadvantage.
Yeah, it looks like a disadvantage. Yeah, I'm with you.
So maybe playing that game at home levels the playing field a little bit.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. There was a related college football topic that I jumped over by accident. I want to just circle back to quickly. Last week, you and I talked for 3 hours
Argued.
about, debated, passionately, about a lawsuit that Georgia had levied on a former football player. And then I know you had an update to that.
Yeah, so
That
that was a big news that had come out a couple weeks ago that Georgia's collective was suing former defensive end edge Damon Wilson for breach of contract for NIL. If you want to hear our sides on that story, go back and watch our video. It is long, as Alex the Great mentioned, but it is good. It is passionate, and we are clearly on different sides of the aisle when it comes to that topic. But recently it has come out that Damon Wilson has countersued the University of Georgia. There's some very interesting claims I find in his countersuit. But in general, the entire lawsuit and countersuit has potentially big implications for the future of college football and NIL and the way things are run. So it will be very interesting to keep an eye on how this story progresses and what the outcome is, because it's not only important to my favorite school in Georgia, but the rest of college football as a whole. So.
Yeah, nah, 100%. No matter what side we follow on who's right or wrong in that, we both agree that this has a huge shadow cast across college football. That one way or another, it will be solved.
Yeah.
So this is huge. We're gonna continue to follow that. Get y'all updates on that as it goes along, and not talk about it for 3 hours the next time we bring it up. But no, it was interesting. It was a passionate debate, man. So check out if you want to see us at our most passionate. Check out our last episode. But I think that's enough college football, man. Or do you have picks?
No, but I told you before we hopped on, I think the most intriguing battle is going to be that Ole Miss University of Miami game. I thought those two teams looked the best in the games that I watched. Even, Indiana blowing out Alabama, I still think the toughness, that physicality that the University of Miami played with against Ohio State, and then Ole Miss against Georgia, definitely stood out. So seeing those two teams clash is going to be interesting. And then there's that overarching, storyline, if you're a Georgia fan, Carson Beck and his potential to make it to the college football playoff, national championship, and potentially win it after kind of being, I don't know, that his presence at the University of Georgia was fairly polarizing. So it is a unique storyline to Georgia fans. We are watching, maybe some rooting for, probably a lot rooting against.
What side are you on that?
I don't know. I think Miami's defense is so good that I don't think Carson Beck played out of his mind against Ohio State. Their running back, their offensive line, and their defensive line dominated that game. So,
hold on, dude. Are you more so just if 51%, rooting for or rooting against?
I would say because we lost to Ole Miss, it would be redemption, I think, if Ole Miss runs the table.
Oh, okay. That's not where I thought you were going. Okay.
So there's a part of me that's like, let's see the SEC, let's see Ole Miss just take it. But part of me is like, I hate Lane Kiffin, so I don't want to see that level, but we'll have to run with it. And then the other side, if Carson makes it, then good for Carson.
Okay.
I think his decision to stay in college was the best decision for him. I don't know how much you know about that story, but he initially declared for the draft and then decided to transfer instead.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was the best decision Carson could have made. So
Yeah.
I'm not going to root against him as an individual, but I have feelings on his actual leadership, how good of a teammate he is, and how talented of a player he is.
Okay, that's fair. I met up with some bros on Friday, and that was one of the topics of discussion. So Travis Sherm, he was with me. He's a big fan of the U. Another one of the fellas is a fan of the U. And what they told me was that I didn't realize that the national championship was going to be at their home stadium. So I think that would be pretty cool if they could pull that off, bring Miami back to full relevancy. We'd never see the end of Michael Irvin walk around with his damn belt. But that said, Indiana, their defense has just looked very, very, very stout in all of their opportunities, and that coach got a lot of swag and bravado, man. So I think they probably end up winning, but it'd be cool to see Miami do it. If it's not that, I don't really have a dog in the fight anymore. I think it does validate the portal approach to building a team, like the free agency approach. If Ole Miss wins,
well, truthfully, all of the schools that are still relevant have a extremely high portal contingency.
huh? Okay.
The interesting note, and we've talked about our intro and haven't gotten to the main topic, and we're like 20 minutes in. So
No, we're halfway down the list. Halfway down.
Georgia as a roster, if you look at the playoffs, had the highest percentage of their players were recruited to Georgia out of high school. Like 90 some odd percent of the team had come to Georgia out of high school, with a couple portalees sprinkled in there, Zachariah Branch being the most impactful one by far.
Yeah. He had a great game. And I mean, a lot of that is predicated on Kirby, right? Like, people want to play for Kirby Smart and the other coaches that are on his staff. But, I think he has a better and easier time because of who he is and what he's done and what he's instilling, doing a grassroots campaign than other coaches would.
I think we should table that topic for another episode because I vehemently disagree with how you feel about that.
Okay, well, let's table that one because I like to circle back.
Yeah, no.
Another 3 hours coming at y'all in a week or so.
Yeah.
All right, so let's pivot, man. Let's change sports entirely. Let's go.
From the gridiron to the hardwood, you got to keep your eyes on the birds. Let's talk Hawks. Let's talk Falcons. This is Hootie Hoo.
To the Hawks, man. We had some wholesale changes with the Falcons. I wouldn't be mad. I won't do that comparison. I don't think that Quinn Snyder is doing a good job of coaching the Atlanta Hawks. That's not a new take from me. But it appears that it will be on Trae again that their failings are lied at his feet, right? Because with him playing, they're like 2-8. Without him, they're like 14-13. Like, okay, they're near 500. And the games that he has played since injury, there haven't been a lot of those, right? There wasn't a whole lot of cohesion or an opportunity to gel when he got hurt initially because it was fairly early in the season. And there's no opportunity given now because Jalen Johnson has had a lot of success. He's obviously a baller. And but when you get one guy who balls, it feels like everybody wants to get rid of the guy who was previously the baller, as if he didn't ball at all.
I understand your feelings about the topic, and like I've sat on both sides of this aisle. I think Trae's a tremendous talent. I think the coach situation may not be ideal for Trae. It may not be ideal for the Hawks. But at the end of the day, you have a really good core nucleus of players with Dyson Daniels, Nikhil Alexander Walker, and Jalen Johnson that for whatever reason, when Trae's on the court, they haven't been able to get it all the pieces to work cohesively. And it was a similar situation when we brought in DeJounte Murray. I think the DeJounte Trae thing was even worse off because they're both ball dominant guards, or like how would that ever work? I think it was kind of a, in hindsight, an idiotic thing to think that could work. But I feel like with Jalen Johnson, Nikhil Alexander Walker, and Dyson Daniels, like, and Trae, that should all be able to work. And maybe the problem is the other positions that they're lacking. You know, you brought up in a text conversation Kristaps Porzingis, and I think most Hawks, if not all Hawks fans, would be on the same page here, where it's just been disappointing the lack of availability he's had for the squad, and maybe that makes a difference. But I'm not, all that to say, like, I don't necessarily think Trae is the problem per se, but I do think that if you could go out and get max value for Trae Young and get some pieces, like, as a whole, the team might be in a better situation than they are today. And I don't know that you have the resources to do the same thing and hold on to Trae.
I agree with that. Yeah, no. So where you're not going to give him, they're not going to give him max money in this current scenario, right? You have three pieces. Three pieces is easier to build with than one. They're going to cut bait and go ahead and get maximum return for him now. I think is the logic. And it seems like Trae maybe even has bought into that as far as just trying to work with Ansi now to get a trade done. But I don't know what you get for Trae. One, it just feels like his position is somewhat being eliminated from the league, right? Like a ball dominant point guard. There aren't many point guards who average 10 assists anymore. The most people who average assists are centers, right? Which is a sign of inside out ball. But like Jalen Brunson's not averaging 9 even assists.
Yeah.
Tyrese Halliburton was one of the ones who, he was special because he's big and long, and I don't think that he was the defensive liability that they call Trae. That he is. Let's call it what it is. He's a smaller guy. So he was dishing the ball out like that, but there weren't any other point guards. So his position is somewhat being eliminated. A small ball dominant guard, no matter how good his court vision is going to have some issues. So because of that, I don't know what we would get for him. And without getting some level of win now, not even win now, but like building for the future that's not draft picks, I don't know what I would be interested in. I was actually just texting Sherman about it earlier. He's like, "I'll give you Tyler Hero for Trae Young." I said, "Hell no, man, no chance." But I'll take Tyler Hero and Khalil Ware
I'll tell
because we need
you,
a center.
it's not gonna happen. But there's a guy that I would put a package together with Trae for, and that's Giannis. But
Yeah,
I'm a supreme Giannis fan, so that is my own personal bias included in that assessment. But
he's also like one of the top 5 players in the NBA, so it's not all your bias. I think that'd be a sound
I,
trade.
yeah, but I think it's my bias in that like there's a world in which we could get Giannis for Trae without selling the rest of the farm, which I wouldn't want to do. I don't know. I'm not a
Would you
NBA
do
agent.
Trey and JJ
Hell no.
for Giannis?
No, to me JJ's off the
No.
table.
Oh, he's definitely on the table for me because of how good he is. I think he has to be on the table because he also has availability issues, man. I don't want to tie my wagon. He is a hooper through and through. He's a star. Um, he has not shown any level of durability. There's no way that I can tie my future to Jalen Johnson alone. Now, if I can
No,
get a Giannis, he can be gone.
but could you
Well, no, that's
imagine?
what you're doing, though. He's the star, right? You can't.
Could you imagine though, Jalen, Giannis, Dyson, and Nikhil Alexander Walker out there together?
Giannis is a very ball dominant player.
That's fine.
No, that wouldn't work.
Maybe
It
not.
wouldn't work. And
Uh,
I'm down for trading Giannis for Trae, but I think either one of the threes or fours got to go. Ricochet or JJ,
I'm okay with
one of
getting
them got
rid
to
of
go.
Ricochet.
I don't think that'd be enough for them. That's
No,
why I mentioned.
obvious. That's what I was saying. I don't think it would be enough either. I think you might start to pique some interest with the draft capital that we have, but again, that's not going to be enough. The name I keep hearing people talk about for the Trae trade, and this is where I like, if you're going to go this direction, don't. Like, I'm okay with you trading Trae if it makes sense, but this to me does not make sense, and that's for Anthony Davis.
Street clothes, and that's what I'm seeing the most.
Like, why? Like,
I have no desire for that at
to
all.
me, if that trade gets done, fire Ansi tomorrow.
Mm.
And I've been an Ansi fan to this point. But if he trades Trae for Anthony Davis, bye.
I might be done with sports, man. And we'll get to the birds, the other ones. But if the Hawks do something like that, dog, I'm be so immensely upset that I just have to figure out another interest. And at this point, I've been so dejected from all of our local teams. I'm not gonna just go and pick another team, right? I could be a fan of a player, but it's hard enough to watch the game as it is. Playoffs were good last year. Regular season was trash. It's just a bunch of threes. Um, I'm not tying my cart to another horse. I just had to be done with basketball. Maybe I'll start watching college. That's kind of what's happened with the NFL. Started watching more college because the NFL, at least in my particular city, was a massive disappointment. No, you cannot do that. But that works for Dallas. You put Trae Young and Cooper Flag together, that's gonna be lit. He no longer has to be the number one guy.
Yeah.
You can say the same thing for what was the other one? Uh, there was talks of trade and trade. I haven't seen this one as much more recently, but doing a 1-for-1 with Ja.
Ja Morant.
Yeah, so Ja brings the blickies.
Hey,
Nah,
I
I
mean,
think he's been better. He's been holstering them now. You seen him holstering?
I think if we do that, I would be happier about that. But if we do that, just stay out the nightclubs in Atlanta. Just stay safe, people.
Yeah. I think the nightclubs in Atlanta take better care of their stars than in Memphis. Um, but Ja would have to definitely. I don't know if he's gotten in any trouble this year, right? And last
Oh,
year he was he was throwing grenades. I don't think he got into any off the court trouble, but he was hurt.
I think Ja ever since I guess that was whatever season
Years ago.
when the Nuggets won the championship. Since that year, like he stayed out of the media for negative reasons, but to your point, he's had injury concerns.
Yeah. But then that pairs Trae Young with who I wanted him to have in the first place, Mr. Zach Edey, who, he's had some injury woes as well, but I think that could work out well. Trae Young, Jaren Jackson, and Zach Edey. He needs a legitimate five, is the point of where it's hard to build a team around because that's what would really excel. And there aren't any real bigs. If you have one, you're not going to trade them.
Yeah,
Right? They're not ever going to trade Jokic. Wimby's never going to be traded, right? And then the rest down the list is kind of like disappointing.
yeah.
I threw out one trade idea for Sabonis over in Sacramento. We've traded with the Kings a lot. It'd be just nice to have a five and give them Porzingis, send them over there. But I don't know, man. It feels like he's gone.
I think the writing is on the wall. I did see where he is actively working with the front office to work a situation up. So I do think the writing on the wall. I do think it's a done deal at this point. It's just a matter of where and for what. And I'm okay with it, like I said, with some boundaries, right? Like there's obviously trades that I would not like to see. We talked about a big one that honestly is the one that people are talking about the most, which is a very Atlanta thing, right? Like it's like Dominique Wilkins all over again. Like trade him for a bag of potato chips, probably be a better deal. But yeah, I'm not angry about it from the standpoint of like I don't think it's a stupid thing to be looking in this direction. I think it's sad because I feel like management has failed Trae, not Trae failing Atlanta, right? But I do think that the way that the team is constructed now, like we may be better off long term with if we can build around the core that we have versus trying to fit it to Trae, because we haven't been able to fit it to Trae so far in his career.
It's true. I second everything that you just said. The other hesitancy I have is giving Jalen Johnson the reins, and it's only because of his availability. So 36 games last year, 56 the year before that. This whole season is now 82 game season. He played 36 games last year, 56 the season before that. His rookie year, he played 22 games. He did play 70 games his second season in the league, right? But that's scary to talk. Like I had Zion dreams, right? I can't levy the future on somebody who hasn't been available.
So I'm with you there, and that's why I know it's pipe dreams, but you go after a guy like Giannis if you don't give Jalen up, if you give up some other pieces, you're not tying your future to Jalen, right? Like Giannis is your clear and obvious number one, and I still think like if you trade Trae, you're still looking for a clear and obvious number one in return, and Jalen is your secondary superstar. In an ideal world,
like what it's been, right? Like when they're throwing the chips on the table, like AD is not. He's not coming in being number one. Jalen Johnson is better than AD.
Yeah, for sure. But I think that's because the ultimate question is like who is willing to give up a number one? Like what number ones are available on the market? To your point, right? So, but I'm with you. I guess all that to say is I'm with you. Like Jalen doesn't need to be the star of the show. He needs to be the co-star. And maybe you don't get
Mhm.
it with the trade for Trae, but that's what you're looking for long term, like going into next year. I don't know if you can truly be in a win now mode trading Trae.
Good, because they're 500. I mean, just above 500 without him. It's not like they're just scorching the earth out here.
Right. So
Now, I think that Jalen, if he can play 70 games a year, can be a true number one from what he's shown. It's that, but that part specifically is
it's a
where
big if.
I have some doubts. Yeah, big if. So
Yeah.
I mean, we'll see what happens, man. But I'm not mad. I'm more sad, right? To the very point that you said, like the front office failed Trae, he didn't fail Atlanta. So,
Absolutely.
all right, man. To the main course, you think?
Absolutely. We got like 20 minutes to give the other birds their due.
Look, they don't even deserve that, man. So obviously there was some big news with the Falcons. We fired our head coach. We fired our GM. RIP, Scary Terry. You did your thing here, dog. But I understand that it is a business. So when we talked about earlier in the season, that was something we talked about, right? Like if one of them goes, they're probably both gone. So both of them are gone. I got a letter from Mr. Arthur Blank this morning, making it very clear that, which was actually probably one of the more encouraging things that I've heard out of the Falcons organization in a while. He's hired a firm. You had some news on the Iceman that I hadn't heard that until you text me, and I hadn't looked it up. But they fired both Raheem and Terry Fontenot before Bloody Monday. Like game ended a couple hours later. Hey, them dudes is fired. And then Arthur Blank's letter, he said, they had hired this firm like 2 months ago. So that writing was clearly on the wall. And I'm super encouraged that he had already made a decision. Like, no, there's no way for him to save his job. He's not the guy. We wish him well. We thank him for his service. Um, and the fact that me and Arthur are on the same page there is encouraging for the future of the Falcons.
So you glossed over or didn't mention at all. There was one other move that was made, and that was removing Rich McKay as the CEO of the Falcons, which I think is big news. I hope it's big news. I'm a little skeptical because he didn't get released from the Arthur
He
Blank.
got a promotion.
I don't think he got a promotion. He was told to focus on other things, and that is the World Cup and the national championship game that's coming to the city next year. And so his intentions were
Building out like $1 million facility for the ladies soccer team that's coming in. All these big money projects. I
yes.
know Rich McKay got a raise, so that's why I call it a promotion.
I think he was already doing those things though. So that's why I hesitate, but I don't know. You might be right. He may have got a promotion. Either way, get the hell away from the Falcons. That's my feelings on it.
I feel that. Yeah.
So, yes, I would be more encouraged if he was just out of the potential equation altogether, but he's still part of the competitive whatever committee that the league meets, does all the rule changes.
KMPSE, yeah.
Whatever. As long as he has nothing to do with football operations and decisions regarding the football team, I'm okay. So we'll have to wait and see.
Did you get that from the letter? It sounds like that. I read that in the letter.
I did too, because they promoted
Greg
Beadle to CEO, which also opened up a position as the president of the Falcons football ops, which is a title I am hearing that Matt Ryan is in consideration for. And I want to get your thoughts on that in a minute. But it's encouraging that role is open. The CEO is filled. And then obviously you have your GM and your coach. So it sounds like Rich McKay will no longer have any hopeful influence on this team moving forward, because I think that's an important one as well.
I mean, it says expected. Matt Ryan is expected to be hired, and this is Fox Sports, as the Falcons president of football operations. So where do I land with that? I like Matty Ice. I hate the way that his separation went. I know that when I was reading about Terry, they mentioned the strong draft class this year and the stars that he picked up over the last couple of years. But one of the negatives that he had was chasing after Deshaun Watson, and that resulting in Matt Ryan, his separation from the organization. So I've always been a big Matt Ryan fan. I watched him comment or analyze, comment both, right, on games. And I think he does really good job of that. And I mention that because I think that shows signs of knowing the game. And if you can know the game beyond playing it, you should be able to do decent within a front office position. So I'm encouraged. I like bringing him back. Would I have preferred somebody with a little more tenure? Maybe, but I think that all depends on the head coach and the GM hire, right? If those guys are vets, I have no problem with Matty Ice getting the role that he's up for.
So I'm with you on that. I have a slightly different take on it. I like Matt Ryan. He's the winningest quarterback in franchise history, right? Like, he's done a lot of great things for the city of Atlanta. Even the way, the city maybe treated him in his final stages of his career were undeserving, and he still has shown nothing but love and respect for the city and the fan base. So he's a class act. I think he's a good family man. Overall, I think he's a good person. Now, will that translate to being, a results driven, high performing individual in the front office? I don't know. But I do tend to feel hopeful that he could be good in that job. And I think ultimately, from what I've read, is he has personally been looking at potential GM and head coach candidates. So if he were to take that role, he would be involved in making those decisions. And I can't speak necessarily so much on the GM side of things, but on a head coach search, I do think Matt Ryan, having been an NFL vet, having played for several coaches, could be a pretty good gauge on how he thinks a coach will perform in the locker room, how well a team will take to them, and then ultimately philosophies, right? Like, Matt's got to have his own football philosophy that he can jive with on in a coaching search. So I do think there's some benefits there. Do I think maybe someone more tenured might be better for the role given our circumstances? Yeah, probably, but I wouldn't just write off Matt Ryan as a legitimate possibility and someone that could do very well in that specific role.
One thing that you didn't mention is that he also knows the locker room, right? Like, he's been with those guys. He was at training camp back-to-back years, so he knows those guys, and that informs his decision on the head coach as well. And the way that I read the letter, it seems like he wouldn't. He would definitely have a hand in hiring those guys, but they would work together as a triumvirate, right? To get the the roster where it needed to be, and so that for me is encouraging. Off real quick, Troy Aikman, he's wanted a GM job for a long time. I think he is currently being contracted by the Dolphins to help them find their next GM. He's been offered, from what I understand, coaching jobs, but he's not interested in coaching. He's always turned that down. He wants to be a GM. He wants to build the roster. Having seen the success he saw with the Cowboys. Years of championship runs. I wouldn't mind old Troy being a GM for the Falcons, man.
Yeah. So my hesitation when you start getting into former player GMs is when it comes to the money and managing a cap. And obviously, you're going to have a staff full of people that run numbers and do some things, but you can't be completely ignorant of it, right? And you sometimes have to make decisions analytically instead of emotionally, I think, to be good in that role. So that would be my only concern with a decision like that as a GM is just how well are they going to manage the cap? How well are they going to manage the contracts?
I think your emotions get you closer to a championship than
Do they?
your.
Because then you extend Matt Ryan, 4 times, and Julio Jones before his contract is up, and then you end up eating $70 million in dead cap and setting your franchise back like 3 years, because that's basically what the
Where have
Falcons
we been
did.
since then? And we haven't been to the playoffs since.
Right, and
When we
what
start
I'm
operating like that.
but that's what
I
I'm
know there were penalties, right? 3 years of it was all right. We had to pay the fine, right? But we've still sucked. After that money's been long gone, we still were trash, and it felt like we swung too far in the corrective state from Thomas Dimitrov, right? There has to be some emotion there. You had to feel like this guy can win us a championship. He did get us there, and then the next year we were shafted by the Eagles on a play that should have been a pass interference, but it was only after that things started to fall apart. Like Julio didn't return at that point, so that was 2 years of money that I think it was 2 years of money that we had to pay that we didn't see the player that we were paying for. Obviously, the Matt Ryan fiasco did occur, but I can't. You can't go full money ball in football, or you won't have success, right? It feels like that's what we're doing right now, and the fan base, myself included, is turning on the team.
I disagree with the idea that we are going full Moneyball, because when you look at the last GM, and you're, I think, higher on Terry than I am. I don't think Terry necessarily deserved to be fired, but I think what ultimately got him fired was how the quarterback position was handled under his tenure. You mentioned the Deshaun Watson, Matt Ryan fiasco. Then you gave the ball to Desmond Ridder and Marcus Mariota and Tyler Heineke, and then Kirk Cousins and Michael Penix. That's a lot of quarterbacks in a 5-year span, mind you. None of them really have been successes to this point.
Now, is that not Moneyball, though?
I don't think
Obviously
so.
not Kirk.
I don't.
But
it's not Moneyball.
Marcus Mariota didn't show you that he deserved any money. You
they
brought in
had no money.
The minimum.
But and this is where I think, unfortunately, Terry had to pay the penalties of the past, because when he came in, there was no money, right? He was part of the regime that ate the $70 million that was emotionally spent by Thomas Dimitrov. So I think that's somewhat unfair criticism, right? It is facts. It happened, but the circumstances were he inherited the worst financial situation anyone could ever, and he had to try to dig himself out. And when we got there, what did they do? They emotionally went out. They signed Kirk Cousins to a massive contract coming off a huge injury for a quarterback, a old back end of their career time frame. And then they doubled down by drafting Michael Penix, who will have to reserve judgment on his future. But now we find ourselves in a pretty sticky situation, because you have an injured starting quarterback, you can't afford to keep Kirk Cousins because right now with Kurt on the books, you have $1 million in cap space going into next year. So you have to clear him off the books to have, I think you end up with like $34-35 million in space. But now you have to go out and find a quarterback that will be assumed as the bridge between the beginning of the season and whenever Michael Penix is ready. If you still think if you still think Michael Penix is your future, and on top of that, you don't have a first round draft pick this year. So I think you've put yourself in a pretty rough situation trying to manage this team going into next year.
You know how I feel about that draft pick. I think James Pierce is well worth it. I will say though, how bad would it look if you go and draft yet another quarterback? We're not the Cardinals, right? Like that's not a good look either. I think Michael Penix, you gotta play him, at least when he comes back and see what you got. Now that does put you in a dicey position because if he doesn't have that level of success that you want or expect, what do? How many games does he actually get to play coming off of his injury, right? So you do have to have a bridge. I don't know who that bridge is. I've heard Malik Willis being cried for, right? Whoever the GM is not inheriting a great role, but they do have some fire young pieces. Like you got the best running back in the league, a top 10 wide receiver in the league. You got two rookie defensive linemen who are fire. You got two secondary rookies that are fire. You have a lot of pieces in place, but you got to come in and make decisions on Kyle Pitts, right? I think it's a foregone conclusion that Tyler Algier is probably gone due to the money situation, right? But there are some big decisions to make once whoever lands the job, once they get started.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, I 100% agree with you on the value of James Pierce, right? He's the first rookie to have double-digit sacks since Micah Parsons. If he is, 80% the player Micah Parsons has been in his career, then that's a home run.
Home run.
I just think when you look at the situation as a whole, with the Michael Penix, the Kirk Cousin, the fact that you really need to retool the offensive line if you want to improve, you just kind of put yourself in a harder situation than necessary when you stack all those decisions together. Now, if you had told me, you and I both, I think, were excited about the Michael Penix situation.
Yeah,
but
if great succession plan that they have for Kirk.
I think that in theory it was a good idea with Kirk Cousins and coming off the injury and the age. But I think where he gets sideways is the amount of money you invested in Kirk and the fact that if you take that Michael Penix pick away and you went a different direction, I think this team is in a better circumstance with finding a replacement to Kurt, maybe letting Kurt play out the remainder of his career or his contract. But right now you're just in that weird, like, is Michael Penix the future? Is he not? Is he injury prone or is he not? Like, he's had lots of injuries, but it had been 3+ years from his last injury to this current injury, right? So I don't know that that's necessarily a fair label to put on him. But you don't know, right? Like, you don't know if Michael Penix is your future franchise quarterback or if you're going to be looking for one in, 12 to 24 months. And that is the position we have to get right.
Yeah, you got to get quarterback right. Nothing else really matters. I'm looking at his draft now just to see if there were any pieces that were drafted, near him that we could use. Rome Odunze. We need a number 2 wide receiver. A bunch of quarterbacks, JJ, Bo Nix, Brock Bowers would have been nice, but you wouldn't have done that with Kyle Pitts.
Was Ibuka in
Got
that?
your hands address.
What was
Nah, he was a rookie this year.
Marvin Harrison was in that draft then?
Marvin Harrison, but he went 4, so
Yeah.
he wouldn't have been available even without drafting Penix.
Jared Verse has turned out to be a stud, right? Like
Jared Verse is a stud.
you
I
could
mean, Leatu Latu is really good.
so you could have gone that direction and maybe, saved your your first round pick this year. Like didn't trade back and still gotten like a Javon Walker or a James Pierce Jr. and paired them alongside a Latu or a Jared Verse, right? Like hindsight's always 2020, and it's interesting to speak in hypotheticals, but at the same time, I only brought it up to say you're in a weird situation because of those decisions. And now whoever comes in is going to have to navigate that. And it's not a great place to start. But to your point, we have a lot of really young, exciting pieces. Bijan is an absolute beast. Drake London is, when healthy, a very good wide receiver. And the defense, you got the 2 young defensive linemen. Divine Diablo is great. Xavier Watts was great. Jesse Bates is great. Who's the other rookie defensive back?
Billy Bowman Jr.
Billy Bowman Jr. is great. So it is a roster that I think you can do a lot with. But like I said, we got to figure out that quarterback situation, and you got to improve the offensive line, because that was like, I said it. I think it was that Monday night game against the Rams. What would Bijan look like with a top 5 line?
Yeah, it'd be crazy.
He's breaking records.
CJ2K's record's coming down, right? Because he went crazy. So there's so many points that we don't have to talk about now because the coaching staff and the GM have been turned over. But one of the ones that, well, no, I'm not even going to bring his name up. I think that with the firing, there are also questions that have been answered, or not questions. They've eliminated the question. They haven't been answered. They're no longer necessary to answer. But the quarterback is definitely one. I say all that. I'm rambling. I say all that to say there was a part of me who was thinking that they were going to run the whole thing back, like Kirk and Michael Penix, and there's no chance that they can do that now.
There's a chance.
There's small,
but I think it's highly unlikely. I honestly think it was unlikely that they were going to run it back. The one piece that I'm grateful to say is that our special teams coordinator and our offensive coordinator, we no longer have to ramble about. Because they honestly, Raw got himself in trouble with some decisions, with some comments and all that. But ultimately, his undoing was the offensive coordinator and the special teams coordinator.
Yeah.
He screwed up the defensive coordinator in year 1, but he made himself right hiring Ulbrich, in my opinion. But he didn't do the same with those other 2 positions, and it cost us a playoff spot.
It did. Their record, you've seen that, I'm sure. Their record in games after they're no longer in playoff contention is like 12-4. And when they matter, they're under 50% win percentage.
Yeah, that's crazy.
It's a shame, man. I left the Benz. So a lot of people that I spoke to at this past game and at the game on Monday are of the opinion that Penix ain't it. And I'm like, that feels like a very quick window. I know he got hurt, he had some good games before he got hurt. He started off pretty good. Um, and I think he was hamstrung by the OC, is what I tell people, but most people are done with him.
Yeah, I think we should talk about that maybe next week in more
Yeah.
detail because we are over on time as per usual. But I do want to say one thing about that, and if you look at Kurt and Michael Penix, their statistics side by side, like you would have, besides, well, I think you can even include wins and losses. They're almost identical side by side. I think statistically, actually, Michael Penix was a little better, had more yardage, less interceptions, and some other things. But the eye test said that the offense functioned better with Kurt. And I would say that some of that, I believe, as you mentioned, was the OC and the way that they played it. And I don't know, we won't know if the way the plays were called were due to Michael Penix not being able to play from under center. But if that is truly the case, then he's not it. That changing OC isn't going to fix that. And I think that's
the case. I do agree.
If that's the case, and that's something that going into next season or whenever we see Michael Penix again, I need to see him be able to play from under center before I stamp and say yes or no on him being the future of the position for the Atlanta Falcons.
Yeah. I think we got to give him that time, but we shall see.
I think I guess it depends on what we do this offseason because he's not going to start the season as QB1.
No, he's not.
And depending on who we go get and depending on how that person does, like we may or may not see Michael Penix when he's healthy. Right? Like if we go out and get somebody and they're 8-0 and Michael Penix is ready to play, I don't think you make the switch. That's just my opinion.
I don't know who we go out and get that'll have us at 8-0.
Look, I'm just throwing hypotheticals out there. But yeah, so it'll be interesting. We'll talk more Falcons in the coming weeks. I did want to, because the season just wrapped, just one final question, or two really. What's your temperature like currently? I know, back a few weeks, I'd probably say your temperature was pretty ice. What term did you use? Colder than
polar bear's toenails?
Yeah. Are you still feeling that today, or do you feel a little bit warmer knowing that they've made the changes that they've made? And then follow that up with just like, give me your high, your best, what you feel the most that you want to gravitate or hold on to from this season, and then what is something like, what's your low?
Gotcha. I was still very cold until I read that letter from Arthur Blank, and that kind of heated me up a little bit to know that he had been planning this for a while. He saw the writing on the wall, and 2 months ago, he hired a firm to start looking for coach and GM. Right, that was encouraging. But I'm still kind of cold, right, considering where we are at the quarterback position. So I'm not great. I was telling Brittany, we looked for him. I was looking for our rep when we were at the game on Sunday to just see how I could go about selling my PSL, because I'm not interested in spending money on the product right now. And without a quarterback, I'm still disinterested. Now, I will say that as a superlative, Bijan, I said it at training camp. I loaded a picture, said Offensive Player of the Year loading. And I think he is deserving of that award. I hope he gets it, and whoever comes in just needs to realize the star that they have, his ability is he feels like a generational talent, and I understand now why Terry drafted him, even though we had Tyler Algier already. The way that he was used in the last game or the last couple of games, just benching him in the end was a travesty. But Bijan is a dog. I want to see more of him. I can leave my hat on him. I also think that the draft class that we talked about, those four rookies that Terry got, Billy Bowman Jr., Xavier Watts, Jalen Walker, and James Pierce Jr., are going to give us a bright future to have those young players sitting there and available. It is a brighter future. But overall, I'm still kind of dejected with the Falcons and less than meh.
And so would I assume like your high would be like the Bijan, all those things. So what's something what is the low? Like what are you putting in the back of your mind and locking it away forever and never revisiting?
Zach Robinson as an offensive coordinator. I mean, I I don't never want to hate to keep a man down, but I never want to see him in the Falcons organization ever again. Um, wish Raheem well too, but he got to go too. I don't need to see him in a Falcons with a Falcons logo on again. But yeah, Zach is probably the low because of the opportunity he was given, how many chances he had, and I don't think he had any success.
Yeah. For me, temperature wise, I don't think I was as cold as a bear's toenails. I still had some vested interest in the games because I drafted Bijan number 2 overall in my money fantasy league, and Bijan was a heavy contributor. He didn't single handedly win me the league, but he was easily my MVP for the
Yeah,
year. So I was cold, but a little. I had more to watch for. But overall, I think I'm pretty much in line with you. Like the changes, the GM, the head coach. I think honestly, the Rich McKay news is probably more impactful if he truly doesn't have any influence on the team. Um, but I'm still pretty like, what are we gonna do to turn this around and become a playoff team? Because the talent's there, right? Like we discussed it a lot. Like you have a good young core and you're in a window and it's the Falcons thing to do to miss the window. Um, so that has me a little bit cold. The highlight of the year for me is at the end of the regular season, we're number 2 in the league in sacks.
oh yeah, that's a big deal.
After being last, next to last, third to last for like the last decade. It's been a problem that we've had what feels like my entire life uh, without, a couple of seasons mixed in. You had the 1 year from Vic Beasley and you had, good years, John Abraham, but you had
Mm.
like some miserable seasons rushing the passer sprinkled all through there. So it's encouraging to see that improvement on the defensive end, on the defensive side of the ball. The low would be the fact that we couldn't capitalize that by just a somewhat, um, competent offense, right? With the weapons that we have, and ultimately, I think the biggest detriment was the fact that we couldn't get it right on special teams. It looks like Zane Gonzalez is deserving of the job moving forward,
I'd agree.
but the fact that it took so long to get here, and the fact that special teams single handedly lost us like 4 or 5 games this year is really like stupid. It should be
It's stupid.
like it should be the easiest thing to get right. But for
You're only
us,
on the field 25% of the time, maybe less than that.
yeah, you got one job.
You're absolutely right.
So that's my low. And, I am interested in seeing how this story plays out. And obviously, we'll keep everybody informed as we do. But I think we're kind of going into more of a dead season. Obviously, the Hawks are still playing, and there will be news. But we're moving into a season without football, no baseball. College is just about wrapped up. Um, I don't know if United's going to be enough to sustain some topics. So I think, moving forward with our content, at least, we want to bring you some good discussions about things going on in the sports world that are, impactful to the city of Atlanta, that are relevant for our teams, but are also more general sports topics. But obviously, we'll keep everyone informed with some news and talk about things as relevant as they are when they're relevant. But I do want to circle back and talk about some of these more hot button topics that we can go into a little bit more in depth debate, discussion, philosophy, and that kind of thing. So.
Yeah, man, that sounds good. And I'm with that. I signed off on that. So we're going to keep bringing you out some good content, some sports content, something that maybe you all will participate in at a higher clip since, the Falcons have lost a fan in me. No, they haven't lost a fan, but I'm definitely not as passionate about it. So I don't expect a lot of people to care what we talk about with the Falcons or the Hawks for that matter. Maybe we'll talk about Ozzy Albies and his fish tank.
Oh, I seen
We'll say
some
that for
clips.
another day.
Did I send you the clip?
It's wild, dog. No, I just stumbled upon it. I saw that you liked it too. When I was on Instagram.
I sent it to Sarah. I
Big old fish, man. That seemed like a big risk getting in there. Like you lose a couple fingers, dog. Your season's over.
Yeah, no, I definitely would find a lot of joy in talking about stuff like that. And obviously, I'm passionate about college athletics, and the state of that game is very polarizing, and there's a lot of opinions on how to fix it. And I think you and I both have like a business entrepreneurial type of mind, and so I find those discussions really interesting to see the perspective, because you have the fan, but you also have the business, and how do you make those two gel, and how do you make a cohesive product that appeals to both, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, so we'll
all
be
the leagues. It feels like college football is most fixable. It's in shambles. I'm not saying it's going to replace, but seems like there's a path forward. Whereas, I don't know what you do to save the NBA at this point, or the NFL is doing incredibly well. So I don't know if they need saving, but we'll see how things go, man.
right. But yeah, so we'll be bringing you some more content this year, maybe a little different than what we did in the last 2 years. So we appreciate all y'all sticking with us, and if there's something you want us to talk about, you want to get our takes on, something we can debate or break down and scheme about, whatever it is, just let us know in the comments. Shoot us a DM on Instagram or TikTok. You can find our Instagram or TikTok at Players Ball Podcast. Hopefully we'll get some more of that content out this year as well. And again, hit that like, subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.
Peace.
Peace.